Welcome to Success Redefined with Dr. Toni Warner. I'm Dr. Toni, mom of 5, psychotherapist, author, and mentor. Here, you're going to find insightful discussions spanning science, psychology, and soul as the personal and professional meet, and we explore the intersection of what really matters. So success can be redefined with connection, healing, and fulfillment in mind. Today, we have Dr. Algernon Baker with us, and we met many years ago as private practice owners. And when I met him, I could tell that not only did he care about his work, but he was just willing to keep it real. So he's going to do that today in this conversation as we explore how we can engage Black men in therapy in a healthy and effective way. And we're going to have this conversation alongside of an accompanying conversation of evolving in faith. And Dr. Algernon is going to share some of how that has affected his life journey, both personally and professionally. As a licensed mental health practitioner, Dr. Algernon is passionate about destigmatizing therapy for men, especially those in the African American and Christian communities. He travels around the country speaking in conferences, churches, and to men's groups, educating people about mental health and its role in overall well-being. His first career was as a musician, and in the first few years after college, he traveled throughout Western Europe, performing in jazz clubs, churches, and concert halls, got to meet all kinds of people. And so he's a little rusty these days around playing the piano and singing and such, but he still enjoys doing that. He spent 16 years in pastoral ministry, and during that time, he discovered counseling was the best part of his work. It really drew him in. And so in light of that discovery, he chose to become a psychotherapist and do the work of healing through talk therapy. He has a PhD in marriage and family therapy and is trained in emotionally focused couples therapy. I want to offer a quick disclaimer that there is some adult language in some of the episode today. So if you have little ears around, you may want to put some earbuds in. Let's go ahead and join this conversation surrounding helping Black men to engage in their healing and deconstructing Christianity as an act of faith, not as an act of defiance. I am going to be honest that I was like, can we fit everything that I would like to talk to Algernon about today in one episode? I don't know, because so maybe in the future I might have to ask you to come back.
I would love that.
There's so many people that need to hear about this topic, myself included, because we don't talk about it enough. There's so much stigma around it,
Yes.
and it's so multifaceted, right? Because we have what I really want to focus on with you today, and I know that you have your own personal story behind it, so I want to hear that too, is this idea of how you help Black men in particular heal when there has and continues to be a stigma systemically, racially, et cetera, around Black men feeling their emotions, asking for help, right?
Yes.
Engaging in therapy
Yes.
alongside this deconstruction of faith. And that's a whole can of
That's a
worms
whole, yeah.
in
Yeah.
itself. But you do it. This is where you specialize so much. And so thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here and even beginning to scratch some of beneath the surface with us.
Yeah. No, I'm really happy to be here, and I'm so glad to talk about this subject. This is really my passion. I remember the first time my wife and I went to therapy, which was fairly early on, maybe in the first 5 years or so. And I was just like, I'm not paying some stranger to talk about my problems. We should be able to work this out. We don't need to involve another person, in our situation. And that was my mentality. And, probably late 20s or so at that time, and I just was not about it at all. And I ended up having a good experience with that therapist. And then later, when I was pastoring, the best part of my work that I loved the most was meeting with folks one-on-one and in couples counseling sessions. And of course, in seminary, you don't really get a lot of counseling stuff. You might get one counseling class, one pastoral care class that doesn't really prepare you to do the work. But that was the place where I felt most gifted And that was the thing I loved the most, you know. And so I thought, I think I want to go back to school and figure this out. The catalyst for it actually was like a year to the day that I started pastoring this church. I had a murder suicide in my church. And one of the ushers killed his wife, then killed himself, and they left five kids, the youngest of which was 13. Just a horrible situation. And I remember, in most, like all churches, we do funerals, the pastor is walking in front of the family or whatever, and there are two coffins because the family insisted on having one funeral. And so there was two caskets on either side of the aisle. I'm coming down the aisle, about to faint, quite frankly. And I thought, gosh, I need more skills. I need more skills because I had no one to call to help me. The funeral was fairly easy. It was picking up the pieces with the kids later on and with her siblings. That was the hard part, And I thought I got to go back. I need more skills. So for me, that was the catalyst to start this. So I work specifically with Black men because I used to be that guy who didn't believe in therapy and who didn't want to really open up, didn't really have the language for what I was feeling. I had two settings. I was excited and pissed off. And for a lot of
Mhm.
my brothers, that's sort of where we are. How do you feel? I'm frustrated. Okay, but we don't really talk about sadness and shame and disappointment and fear. The hardest thing to get a man generally to say is I'm afraid. I'm not afraid of anything, they'll
Mm.
say. Oh, yeah, okay, let's talk about this. So I find really building the alliance, of course, is always great in the work that we do. That's necessary. It's not built in, though it might seem like it's built in, because if they're a Black man, I'm a Black man, right? But it's not really built in. It's making sure that he understands, brother, I get you. I know, and I always ask him, how do you feel about being here? Especially if his wife or his partner asked him to come. How do you tell me how you feel and be honest? And so I get a chance to tell him a little bit of my story, my reluctance, to doing it. And most of my clients are that don't come from word of mouth are Black men, or they come from women who love a Black man. So I love this work. And so getting brothers want to heal. We want to have better relationships with our partners and with our children and with our parents and siblings. We deeply want that, but many of us, we don't know how. Because often we grew up in a situation where we didn't have those relationships with our own parents or fathers, but we want these relationships very deeply, desperately. And so the frustration is I want to say something, but I don't know how to. I want to express something, but I'm afraid. And so I like helping Black men specifically who come to therapy for the first time. Let's talk about your emotions. So we get out the emotional wheel and we do a little bit of psycho ed around that. And so now you get a chance to know there's more than two settings. There's a whole range of things that are going on. So I actually enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
I can tell ever since I met you, I could tell you were passionate about your work. So I can tell you're going to bring that passion to our conversation today. And I'm curious, you know, yes, Black men want to heal. Yes, they don't know how. But there's that question of how to get them in the door then, right?
Mm,
What got you in the door, right? What
yeah.
got you in the door when you were like, I don't want to pay someone to tell my stuff
Yep.
to.
Yep.
I'd rather keep it secret,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
What is that major catalyst that you yourself has experienced that helped you go from no, I'm not going to do that, I don't want to do that, to okay, I really still don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it
Yeah.
because
Because a woman I loved asked me to. And that's true for most men. And I tell women all the time who will say, my husband won't go to therapy. What can I do? Ask him to go for you. If you say, baby, I love you, and there's some stuff I want to work on because I want to love you better, and there's a way for us to be better as a couple, and I really think this would be good for us to go. And maybe if he won't go on his own, go with him and do some the couples work and give him exposure to it. But in many cases, a man who loves a woman, and if that woman asks him to go, whether it's his mom or his aunt or his sister or his daughter,
Mm.
we will do almost anything for the women we love. And so I hear a lot of guys, when I say, "Why are you here?" The guy will say, "Well, my wife thought it was a good idea." So, okay, we do that. And it's a particular way of asking. So asking with genuine humility and curiosity, and making sure he knows, I'm not going to gang up with the therapist against you. This isn't about that. I want to be better for you too. I want us to be better for each other. It's not like I think you should go because I'm perfect and you're not. We're both broken, and I want us to go and figure out how to do this better. And in many, many, many cases, I would say most cases, the man will go. So I usually will tell, if the woman calls me first and she knows her husband's hesitant, I'll say, okay, ask him to just do 3 sessions, just three. And then if he's done after three, then okay. And usually, he'll come, he'll try it out, and you know, we start from there. So that's how to get him in the door.
What what if there's fear? So fear of, there the two modes that you express. There's the excitement and then there's the anger.
Mm,
So what if there is the man or the relationship that tends to be more explosive in the anger
mm,
area? So there's fear of, if I say this to my loved
mhm,
one, he might explode and that explosion might come out on me. And I don't mean like a physical abuse,
mhm,
but a verbal
yeah,
abuse, a fear of he's going to explode, because the emotions are so difficult for
mm,
him to
yeah,
handle, that me even bringing this up, no matter how much humility I bring to the
mm,
conversation, feels scary to me. And like an insecurity button is being pushed for him.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really great. It's never easy because we are the way we were made and the way we've been enculturated and the way we've been socialized, and that's certainly not an excuse, but it is a reason for how we kind of show up in the world. So yeah, there is insecurity, there is fear. Often, when typically the woman will call and she'll do the initial right, and I'll say, okay, have him. What's his name? Tell him to call me. Because then he and I get to get on the phone. It's not like she found a therapist, and so, he's coming to her therapist or someone she found. I get to talk to him and say, to hear his story and to ask him some deeper level questions and find out how he feels about this. Has he ever gone to therapy? A lot of the men I see, which are between the ages typically of 35 and 50 or so, their parents were often a part of the crack epidemic in the 80s, and so they were kids who were have that all that trauma. They may have gone to therapy as a kid, years ago, and had a bad experience or something like that. Or it's so much trauma they don't want to unpack it. They just don't want to touch it, and they'll say, "I'm fine," when the truth is
Yep.
they're not really fine. So I think a lot of it has to do with the me as a therapist being able to say, brother, I hear that you're frustrated, and I know that you think that you all should be able to work it out on your own, and I dig that. But it's been 12 years and you haven't worked it out on your own. So if you got a car that keeps breaking down and you're not a mechanic, what are you going to do with the car? You're going to junk it? No, you take it to a mechanic and you get it worked on. And that's all I'm here to do. I'm just here to try to help you and your wife, you and your partner, do this a little bit better. And I don't have a wand. It's going to be work that we do together. But I'm not going to gang up on you with your wife. I'm going to call bullshit. Can I cuss on here? I'm sorry.
I'll just put a disclaimer in the front. No worries.
I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna hold you accountable. That's a much more professional way of saying it. I'm going to hold you accountable for the things that you say and your behaviors, and we're gonna work on this together, and try to give a warning. Hey, listen, this is not gonna be easy. It's like, you want to work out and you want to lose 100 pounds. You can't do it in a week. It's a life changing effort and endeavor. So yeah.
what
I don't even know if
if
that
you
got at
can
your
remember?
question at all.
Well, I'm curious about when your wife, if this was what happened for you, when your wife approached you and said, "Hey, I think that we need to engage in some kind of therapy, whether it's
Mm.
individual or couples." What was your initial reaction? Because I think that that's really helpful for someone who might be listening to your story right now and be like, okay, clearly you were fine. Like, it must not have been that big of a deal for you to be able to just so easily go. That there's got to be some kind of reaction that you had to notice and work through
I'm
too.
not, no, I'm not doing it. That was the reaction. We need to go to therapy. No, no, we don't. No, we don't. You need to go to therapy. You know,
Mm.
you're the one. You're the adult child of an alcoholic. You got this going on. Your family was violent. Something's wrong with you. I was a peach to
Mm.
be married to, you can tell. And that was my posture. If you would stop nagging me, if you would stop yelling, if you would stop doing this is not a me problem. And it took me years to realize, okay, so me shutting down is as aggressive as her yelling and screaming, right? So when she asked initially, if for a long time I kept saying no, then I realized we're not fixing this. We're having the same arguments. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. And we've had our pastor involved, and great guy, but didn't have the skills to do what we needed. And so eventually I said, yeah. I said, okay, I'll try it. We'll go. But it was absolutely not. But of course, we can't afford it. We were young, we can't afford it. And all of the reasons I just gave. So it was no. And, I realized, okay, so I'm hurting her. She's hurting me. And this isn't getting better, and we're raising kids in this too. So that's really what got me to go. And I tell men all the time, when your wife says she wants to go to therapy, go the first time. Because eventually, if she goes, she starts growing, she may outgrow you. If she asks you to go and you don't go, you're going to call me crying later. And I've had men call and they're crying on my voicemail, or I answer and they're crying as they're talking to me. I mean, these are grown, hyper masculine men who are, I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose my kids. And my wife's been asking us to go to therapy and I didn't want to go. And now she's taking the kids and she's gone. And often at that point, unfortunately, it's really difficult, because if she's been asking for years and you've been saying no for years, and it's at that point, and unfortunately, in many cases, that's when men decide to give in, and it's often too late at that point. So,
I've had that experience too. And whether it's an African American man
mm.
or a white
Oh
man,
yeah,
or is when it's there's this sense that until the scale gets so tipped that it's almost like that I have no other option but to say yes, because I'm going to lose
yep.
everything, and that button of fear of like everything's going to get lost if I don't do
Mhm.
this has to get pushed in order for them to say yes,
Yeah,
rather than do it earlier
yeah.
on, when there is less of a likelihood of it getting to that urgency point. Is that common for you to
Oh,
see? Because it certainly is for me
yeah,
too.
absolutely. And I will often ask, okay, when I talk to couples initially, how long have you all been having these issues? Did you do premarital counseling? Have you been to any therapy since you've been married? What other things have you tried? Have you read books? Have you listened to podcasts? Have you gone to couples retreats? What have you done to try to fix these things? Um, and the one I hate the most is, we've tried everything else and we thought we'd just see if therapy could fix it. And I think, probably not. If you tried everything else first, and which usually means they haven't tried much of anything, frankly. And so they come and they're hoping that therapy will fix, in 3 sessions what they've spent, you know 13 years with all these negative interactional patterns and all of the water under the bridge and all the injuries and all of that. Now, they're thinking, okay, let's just see if therapy works. And I'm thinking, if that's the mindset, we're going to just see if it works. Therapy works, but you got to work it, you know. And so that's just, and that's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because it doesn't have to be that way. So I look and I think, gosh, had you gone to therapy when she first asked you all those years ago, you all would have had years of a beautiful life instead of being at each other's throats for all these years. You could have done some really hard work early on and you wouldn't be here. Or what I think is even better for couples to do therapy before, good, robust therapy before they get married. Actually, before they get
Mm,
engaged, because often when I see couples for premarital, they've made the decision already. And sometimes they made the decision prematurely because they make the decision based on they fell in love, whatever that means. And so now they want to get married and build a life, which is beautiful. But in many cases, we're ill-equipped to do that because we're getting married because of an emotion that we think we feel in the moment. And
how do you merge, or do you merge the work that you do with black men healing, whether it's individual black men or them and their couples? How do you merge that with the pastoralship aspect of yourself and your work? Do you bring those
so
together,
it,
or do they stay separate?
That's a great question. So usually I will always, and I've never tried to hide my faith or my involvement with church or my church leadership experience because it's there and it's helped me be who I am. So I disclose it and just let couples know, hey, here's who I am in my personal life. I am a Christian in my personal life, but I'm not going to read the Bible to you. I'm not going to give you scriptures to read as homework. I'm not going to pray with you. This is going to be clinical therapy, and that's how we're going to do. If you decide you want to incorporate your faith, whatever it is, if you're a Buddhist, if you're whatever your particular religion is, and I see folks of all different faiths, and I see atheists and agnostics as well. So I don't really involve pastoral work at all unless I have clients, and I do have some who say they want that. Most of my Christian clients don't want it. They're like, I'm going to leave my faith over here with my pastor. I want to, I want to be able to talk to you about what's really going on. So I enjoy that because then I don't have the pressure of, navigating their faith with them because there's so much diversity in terms of even Christian faith that I would prefer to leave all of that with their pastor and let him or her do that work, and I do the clinical work, and that's preferred. But often I will have a client say, "I want some pastoral perspective." That's why I reached out to you specifically. So in those cases, I stay away from what's the word proselytizing in any way or pastoring in any way. We talk about, so what is your, let's talk about sex. Let's say we have a young couple who are there having sex, and according to traditional Christian values, that's a no-no. Okay, so this is in the Bible. What is your sexual ethic? What do you believe your faith calls you to do? And then we talk about that. It's not me saying, oh, well, the Bible says this. No. How do you read your Bible? And then we navigate those waters based on their belief where they are at the time they're in therapy. Does that make sense?
It does. One of the things that I've noticed in my work, be it whether it's consulting work or therapy work, is that folks that come to me specifically with a Christian background, they actually do tend to want to integrate their faith in some way, but it is largely impacted by religious trauma that they've experienced.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
deconstructing their faith. That's not necessarily the focus of all of our work together, but it's a part of it because it was so deeply ingrained
Yes.
in the way that they've internalized themselves in the world. And I'm wondering if you experience that, because pastoralship is such a major part of you and your life, and then
Mhm.
also therapy became such a major part of you and your life. Did that cross for you?
So often I see folks who have experienced a lot of spiritual abuse. In many cases, they're church leaders who have experienced spiritual abuse. The Lord told me to tell you not to marry this person, or the Lord told me to tell you, all kinds of things. And of course, God doesn't have to tell the pastor to tell you anything. And so I see a lot of folks who are in that space and who've been deeply wounded by church, grew up in really fundamentalist, like I did, fundamentalist backgrounds, and just very, very rigid and very strict and closed-minded, if I can say that. And so being able to look and say, okay, so is this the abundant life that you believe Jesus died to give you? Is it so
Wow.
your husband is a serial cheater. He's given you a couple of STIs. He's all of these things that come with. But I have to stay with him because God hates divorce. So let's look at this. So let's really examine what's the priority here. Is the marriage the priority here, or is your soul and your health the priority here, the health of your children? Let's look at a deeper level instead of just sort of listening to what we've been heard, what we've been taught traditionally, or how we've traditionally read a particular text of the Bible. Let's look at this in light of who you are as a person and the abundant life that you believe Jesus died to give you. Is this that? And most often they can look at it and say, okay, so this isn't that. I don't think this is right. And of course, they come to their own conclusions. But I always want to navigate people because in many cases, the Jesus that we inherited, I don't believe is the Jesus of Nazareth that was the historical figure. I think our faith has been colonized. The Bible itself has been colonized, and we've inherited a Jesus that was curated for us. So we worship a curated Jesus. And I think that's problematic.
Oh, that's a big statement too. That is a big statement, and I can't say that I disagree with that. I'm wondering if that has been your personal experience as a black man in this modern day
Hmm.
that has been, growing himself, evolving in himself and in his relationships. Have you had to also deconstruct what that fundamental Christian upbringing or teachings
Hmm.
have been for you?
Oh, absolutely. It started with me because I started to realize, wait a minute, I think that maybe, and when I stopped pastoring, part of the reason I stopped pastoring is because I got to a point where I thought, I got to stop saying things that I don't really believe anymore. And my own faith was evolving, and I was looking at the text and thinking, I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm not sure that Jesus had to be born of a virgin. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that there had to be a worldwide flood. I don't know. And so I start to question all of these things. And I think that's the beginning of it. The beginning of it is being bold enough to ask the questions, because I think heaven can stand my questions. So, yeah, absolutely. It was deeply personal for me to look at all of this and to start thinking, really, just what does it mean to be involved with organized religion? And what does it mean to have a personal faith? And I'm a black man born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama. My parents were adults during the boycott of 55, 56. So I'm deeply rooted in all of that history. And but I never really brought my understanding. So I'll give you a little more context. So many sentences in my house started with that white man. Right? That
Hmm.
white man. So my parents that's who they were. So that's kind of how I grew up. Very black and very pro-black. But but this Jesus that was curated for me was was very anti-black. That's a whole other episode probably. But so I started
I
to
think we have so many episodes. Yeah.
we I started just to look at that and think, I have to really look at this. And my Bible didn't fall out of the sky. you know Someone actually wrote it, and what does that mean, and what does it mean to be mentally healthy person on the planet in the time that I'm in, to relate to others based on who I understand myself to be, who I understand God to be, having to be more and more broad, and to say something that a lot of pastors are afraid to say, which is, I don't know. I
Mm,
don't know. I don't know. And I got to the point where I had so many I don't knows that I thought, I'm not sure I can proclaim what I've been proclaiming in the place that I proclaim it in this way. I don't think I can continue to do that because I have too many I don't knows. And so I thought, yeah, I think I want to back away from this. And I still do some proclamation, but it's very centered around, Jesus and who he was in the world. And yeah, so absolutely. I think all of our work
wow.
is personal, right? We do the work, and then we help others to sort of evolve in the same way as much as possible.
Absolutely. I absolutely I agree. I'm curious how I'm trying to think what direction do we want to go because you just shared so much richness of what direction do we want to go with that because I have had so many folks come in and have um, family members that are of the Christian faith,
Hmm.
typically in a conservative setting, and the current politics of our time are affecting this significantly for many.
Hmm.
And folks that are coming in and they themselves are wanting to ask questions, like you said, like I don't know, so I want to ask questions,
Hmm.
and that being frowned upon and more so instead of it being a something that supports an evolving faith and a deepening of faith is it can be looked upon as something that is somehow shaking a finger at faith or putting it down in some
Hmm.
way. And I wonder if specifically for Black men who want to heal, if that coincides, if you've noticed that for you or those that you've served, is their faith or their religious upbringing, are you seeing that come into the therapy room in a way, whether they acknowledge it or not, in a way that affects their way of living, their way of being, the way they're showing up in their relationships or what they are or aren't willing to do or say? Are you seeing those come together?
I got to be honest. I'd have to look at the stats again. I don't see a lot of religious men. So I see men who may have grown up in church and sort of abandoned it,
Mm,
and often they're married or they're in relationship with a woman who may be more religious. But I don't see a lot of men who are very religious, and often the men that I do see who are very religious, they tend to oh gosh, they tend to need it. They tend to be, very conservative, very rigid in their religiosity, in their reading of scripture. And yeah, they seem to need that. So they need their partners, their female partners, to be submissive, right? They
mm,
need that patriarchal order because the Bible says it's this way. And unfortunately, I've seen couples really break up. I have a couple right now who's divorcing because of that, because all of a sudden he became a really, he ate some fruit from the Kevin Samuels tree and became a really rigid kind of, if there's a thing as such as toxic masculinity, he became that, and it was really abusive and difficult for her, and they divorced. And it's unfortunate because I did their premarital. I did the premarital, and then to see the evolution. So I think for a lot of men who show up, I'm able to look at their situation, and if they want to incorporate faith, we talk about that. And I will often ask them, "What do you see as your role as a husband? Do you believe in more of a hierarchy? Do you believe that the relationship is more collaborative? What is it that you believe? Because if you believe one thing and your partner believes something else, you guys don't have a structure yet. There's a quote, I'm not sure who said it first, but if no one's following you and you're leading and no one is behind you, you're just taking a walk. So the idea that,
Hmm.
if she's not buying into the fact that you're the head of the house, then you're not, because she hasn't bought into that. And in order for you to be the head, she has to agree. Yes, my man is the head of our home. He makes the decisions, etc., etc. So we end up having a lot of those conversations, and without getting too into the Bible at all. But there's this text in Ephesians 5 that the brothers like, the religious guys like, that says, "Wives, submit to your husbands." And I always have to remind them, there's a verse that starts off in verse 21 of that chapter that says, "Submit yourselves one to another in the fear of God." So what does that mutual submission actually look like for you? And then we can have that conversation so that she feels heard and seen, if she's not buying so much into that hierarchy that he's pushing. And he gets to look at it in a different way and see this compelling love of Christ that's being demanded, which is the ultimate form of submission, I think. So yeah, so a lot of the men that come who are religious, many of them have been hurt. Some of them have not been hurt, but have been so indoctrinated that it's really difficult to sort of disentangle a lot of it. So it's slow work, which is okay.
For you, then, as a man of faith who is also a leader in our world, right? Be it as in your home or in your work,
Yeah.
right? We all lead in some way. What is your definition of how you can really lead and heal successfully
Mm,
as that Black man in our day and
mm,
age? He's got a faith and wants to do well, wants
yeah.
to make a
I
positive
don't
impact.
need to lord to lead.
Tell me
I don't
more.
need to lord to lead. You don't need to be under my thumb. I don't need to make all of the major decisions. I need you. I actually need you. And if we really see, those who believe the creation story as it is, the idea is that God gave the woman to the man as a helper that is suitable, which means she's not a student, she's not an apprentice, she's a helper, which means if I want help, I need someone who is at least as smart as me, if not more, more, right? If I need help on a particular project, I need someone who has knowledge I don't. I need expertise that I don't have. And that in beginning to unravel that old model and say, wait a minute, you all are collaborating here because you need her. And you have to swallow that. You have to internalize that and not feel weakened by it. Because you can still lead her. In fact, if you lead with love, she's probably more likely going to follow you enthusiastically because she doesn't feel lorded over. She feels led, and she feels led by a man who loves her and only wants what's best for her and for the family. So as long as you're trying to lord over her, you can't do this, and you can't go here, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. That's something else. That's not quite leadership.
Mm.
That's bonded.
So there's oh yeah, there's a connection, very intricate connection for you of love being the lead, and not love in the fluffy sense that
Oh,
so many, like the romanticized
right.
kind of
Mhm.
love, a deep, different, secure
Yes.
kind of love.
Yeah. Absolutely. Love behaves. That for me. That's it. Love, you remember? So I don't want to cop to this, but I'll cop to it. Back in the day, I would occasionally watch a little Jerry Springer. So you know what would happen, right? So you have a woman on there, and she has her three kids aren't her husband's, but he doesn't know. She's had 3 children by her brother-in-law, her husband's brother. And
Mm.
so she comes out and she tells a story to everybody, and then they bring the husband out. What's the first thing she says? She says, I love you, right? I love you with all my heart. I love you to death. And I remember even as a young man watching that thinking, man, people don't know what love is. Because, you can't tell me you love me, but you've had 3 children by my brother. That doesn't go together. And so I think helping folks understand love is deeper than something you fall into. It's deeper than feelings that you have. Love behaves. Love
Mhm.
does what's right, even when it's difficult to do. That's that deep kind of love that a man can lead from, even if he has to make difficult decisions. It's not like I made the decision and you have to live with it. Let's come to the point where the decision is our decision, because I don't need it to be my decision. It's okay if you're the person that comes up with the idea and you make the best decision and we go with that. That's beautiful. That's good for everybody. So let's see this more as a collaboration rather than, I have people that I make decisions for and they have to come along based on what I say they said. And the worst is the Lord told me that we're going to do this thing. Well, the moment you do that, my background was Pentecostal. You can probably hear that. So there's this idea that if the Lord says it, then I have to get in line with it. Because if I go against what you're saying, I'm going against what God has said. And the truth is, we don't always hear God like that. And it's, yeah, we don't always hear accurately. And I remember having to move a couple of times for pastoral ministry. And we moved to Kansas City. And I remember thinking, and I remember actually saying to God, Lord, I need you to tell her. You tell her before you tell me. Because if you tell her, then I won't have to fight about it. If she knows, then it doesn't have to be me saying that you said this thing. And so that was sort of my posture at the time. I need her to believe that this is the decision that we need to make for our family. And if she can say, yeah, I think this is a good decision for us, and then my job is really easy, you know.
It sounds like you've come a long way. So as we come to a
Yeah.
close for this episode, what if you could pick one thing that has helped you come a long way in evolving your posture around how you are as a Black man in relationship, how you are as a Black man of faith? What would be the number one thing that helped you
Mm.
the most along this evolution?
I'm going to say 2 words, but I think it's the one thing really. It's humility and curiosity.
Mm,
So always thinking, I don't know. I'm not sure. And that's okay for me to say I don't know and I'm not sure. And there's both of those things. Help me understand this, whether I'm talking to myself, whether I'm questioning something I'm reading, or I'm having a conversation. It's help me understand. I don't understand. Help me understand. I don't get it. I don't. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm lost in the metaphor. I need you to make it simple for me. That's my curiosity. Not asking questions I already know the answer to, because that's entrapment. But genuine curiosity that says, "Wow, I need to know more about this because I don't know everything." So those are the things that have helped me. And I'm still, God knows, I'm still evolving, and hopefully will be until the very end. But yeah, that's the thing. It's the humility and curiosity, which I think is a part of our work with clients, and kind of has to be something we impress on them, especially with couples, because that's at the heart of it. It's this come tell me more, come help me understand, in humility.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Love that. I think we can all benefit from practicing a little bit more humility, curiosity with compassion,
yes,
right? Accompanied with compassion for
yes,
ourselves and
yep.
others. I think that can help all of us evolve, be successful in evolving, whether it's in our faith or the way that we're showing up in our relationships.
Links related to this episode can be found in the show notes section. Want to submit questions about success, satisfaction, healing, and relationships, health, or work? You can do that free and anonymous at drtonywarner.com, where you'll find other resources there as well. Did you benefit from this episode? You can subscribe, like, and share with another to pass it on, because anyone can listen on the go with this podcast audio available on all major podcasting platforms.